At this place in history, we're in Franklin with Steve Perkins, the executive director of the Vermont Historical Society. Steve, as uncommon a sight in this day and age as a working telephone booth is, it's not the booth's presence, but rather the utility company that keeps it operational that brings us here.
Yeah, Mike, I'm really excited. We're going to go inside. This is the Franklin Telephone Company, and we're going to talk to Hugh Gates, who's a third-generation owner of this company. And in fact, it's one of the oldest family-owned telephone companies in the state of Vermont.
Your grandfather founded the company.
Charles Winslow Gates. It was to make communications better between his store, the Farmers Exchange, and the railroad depot at North Sheldon, which he had used telegraph, I'm led to believe. And when the Bell patent ran out and small telephone companies developed, he undertook the operation of doing it. We claim it's 1894, I think, but it could have been 1896. Somewhere we've got some documentation, but we're not very good about keeping track of everything.
And this was eventually Governor Gates we're talking about here, wasn't he?
Yes, he became the governor in 1914, I believe it was. My father, when he came back from World War I and started to manage the company actively, they increased the rates from $1 a year to $2.
Now you're sitting kind of in the historical nerve center of the telephone company, and you've got your hand on a device right there.
This is an Army surplus switchboard, and the top half of this row would be used for the old crank telephones. And whenever anybody would turn a crank, this thing would drop down. And the operator would plug in that, grab this. This is torn apart now, but she could wear this thing. In fact, that's the picture. And she would say, "Number, please." And they would tell her who they wanted to call or the number they wanted to call. And then she would take the other cord and plug it into that line. And we're talking the old crank telephones. And she would turn her crank here and signal on that line. This was Ruth Toof, Miss Ruth Toof, and she was a key person in our town for many, many, many years. But nowadays, my daughter's got it in there where they don't even have two wires, they have a fiber optic. I got to thinking, I guess I've been in the business for about 75 years or more. Actually, it's more. I guess it's closer to 80 years because I started as soon as my father came home from the service. My daughter is the manager and her husband. And then we have a niece a great niece, who is her office assistant. Both of my brothers ran the company for periods of time for us. Well, one of my sisters was a telephone operator, I remember.
So if people want to learn more about the company and the equipment you have here, what would you recommend they do?
I suppose they could call the office here and they'd tell them how to get hold of me.
Making connections with Franklin Telephone. At this place in history.